support it.
I agree, and I want to thank Hope for always being supportive of the Independence Day celebration. Hope braves the humidity and the bug bites, and she still stands there with a smile and leads us all in singing. So this is a good thing, and obviously we appreciate you.
Which
Hope.
makes me a junior Goldie. Just saying, people, just saying.
You need a little more flair.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I need more. Why, this isn't good enough? Wait, I actually brought the trophy.
All right, you're halfway there.
And this is what we give the kids who are writing essays about what freedom means.
Beautiful. All right, can I get a motion to approve $2,000 for the celebration?
Very good.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, well, thanks. Let's hear from All right, moving right along, the American Legion Post, Bishop, they're looking for $1,500. This is what we've been just consistently giving, is that correct, for the Memorial Day celebration? I know you need to get up, unless somebody has any questions.
Well,
Nope.
I think
All
we
right,
do
come on
have
up.
some questions.
Sure, please.
Following up on...
Come on, Bishop.
Okay.
I don't know, necessarily for Bishop so much as discussion, but
Sure.
I think that Mr. Hubert brings up some interesting points about donations across the board. I mean, how much due diligence we do on where the money is going and how it's being used. And, perhaps we, instead of the funds, if there is a question of whether or not we want to research how the funds are being used, that we could do like what we do, which is the donations of the actual flags, or, could we do it in another way other than funds to maybe...
I could help you a little bit. For example,
Yeah.
while Mr. Hubert was talking, I just made a quick list of what the town does to support veterans associated items. We do spend approximately $3,000 on cemetery flags. The American Legion and the VFWs go out to St. Mary's Cemetery and Greenwood Union Cemetery and the African American Cemetery, and they place flags on all the known military gravestones. Obviously, you heard from the town assessor regarding the veterans exemption. We also have the Cold War veterans exemption and a variety of others. We support the Memorial Day celebration. We also support the Veterans Day celebration in town. In addition to that, we maintain the Korean War Monument at Crawford Park. And then lastly, there is a town law that allows for what they call meeting money for the various veterans groups if they ask. And at that point, that's limited by law to $500 per group. Sometimes they ask, sometimes they don't. So that kind of gives you the collective item there.
No, and I'm proud and not surprised that the town of Rye does do all these things, I just think it's worth the conversation to look further into how the money is being spent once it's in organizations' hands across the board. And I think it's a larger conversation, but I think it's one that we should have.
I agree. We should always revisit and identify the better use of funds, or maybe the better way to help these organizations. But I do want to commend the American Legion for ultimately being the point organization for Memorial Day celebration coming this Monday morning. We start at one monument. We start down at the marina.
We start at the marina,
and we spend our morning basically traveling from monument to monument and having a specific ceremony at each monument, where flowers are laid, wreaths are laid, words are spoken, and it's done very well. And obviously the culmination of the parade. So I want to thank the American Legion for that and all their efforts. Okay, Joe's not here, so we'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution Resolution H.
So moved.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
That was for $1,500.
That was for $1,500.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess, Hope, you can, if you'd like to represent Resolution I.
Sure. Okay. I want to mention about Linda Lyons. She was my deputy, and she worked for 25-plus years as the deputy town clerk. She's retired. And I would like to publicly thank her for the dedicated service, and she was very knowledgeable, professional at her job, and very caring, and always eager to help and to extend her knowledge or her service to anyone that would come into the office. And I'm very grateful for her. And so we sent out RFPs to...
Well, before you, could we just, I know a number of us would like to comment on Linda and the terrific work she did for the town. And she kind of snuck out. I know I was away in April on Easter vacation, on family vacation. But I know we want to, one, acknowledge the absolutely fantastic work she did for, how many, 3 decades? Almost 3 decades, right?
Well, she was here about 26 years.
26 years.
Right.
And just, tireless public servant working, day in and day out to serve the community. We were well served by Linda, and I think, I actually ran into her when they were having a surprise party for her, and she said she didn't want to have a party, but I think we need to do something for Linda to show our appreciation, and so if we could help us organize that, I'm confident the board would want to support that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no.
She was just that type of person. Even when I was a tax receiver and we had to work late, she would just help out, and she was just always eager to accommodate, and she was a very caring person. I miss her.
Yeah, I'll bet you do. I'll bet you do.
And,
we all do.
We did send out an RFP for her replacement. It was, and we were very fortunate to get a few resumes, but and we sat through and the applications, and a really wonderful young lady, Neva Garces, has accepted the position, and this is the resolution for that.
Wonderful. Any questions for, is she bilingual?
Yes, she
is.
is.
Oh, perfect, great.
And she worked for the SARE program.
Oh, wonderful.
And she has a lot of technical skills, and she really fit the RFP perfectly.
Beautiful. Questions for Hope?
Well, I want to thank Hope for giving me the opportunity to help interview. There were four applicants, and all 4 came in for the interview. And Nieva she was by far, well received by all of us, and I think that she will serve the town of Rye well. And Hope will tell you, there was no question that was an easy question that was thrown at her. As a matter of fact, other applicants had a difficult time answering the questions that we asked. But Nieva did a very good job, and I think that she'll serve Hope well.
Muy bien.
We look forward to meeting her. Yeah. But yes, I think Supervisor Carvin's right. I think we'd all enjoy a little celebration with Linda.
Yeah.
I think it was hard for her to leave.
Oh, I'm sure.
Hard for us to
25 years.
Yeah.
make that break, so she walked out quietly, and we've done our own little things with her. But
Well, we're going to drag her back
She's going to feel at the end of this year.
We can pick a place or do something as,
Yep.
friends and colleagues.
Yep, great. Can we get a motion to approve Neva Garces as Linda Lyons' replacement?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Lease agreement, we got a lot accomplished when I was away in April. Deputy Supervisor Villanova, you want to talk about this?
Quite simply, what a difference a month makes. So we went from the town of Rye in a position where we're owed money, and I believe that number was just around 34,000.
I think it was 37,000, if I'm not mistaken.
It was 37,000? Yeah,
I don't remember. I think it was 37,000.
whatever it was. We identified an amount last month, and we were definitely owed that money. And after last month's meeting, within a matter of a week and a half, by the end of April, we had a meeting with the representatives from the Capitol Theater. They satisfied us we are whole They paid the town of Rye what was due to us, and in return, given that we are, our focus is to go forward to sell 10 Pearl Street, this resolution here allows the Capitol Theater to maintain the lease agreement in place for the next 2 months until the new property owner takes over the operation of this facility. And they will still provide us with insurance. They will still operate the same way and still allow the access to the town employees when we have our events here in the evening. And that's what this resolution represents, is giving them that opportunity to finish out the end of our time here as managing the parking lot.
Terrific. Okay, can I get a motion to approve the resolution relating to the lease agreement with Capital Enterprises? All right, can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, Deputy Supervisor, we have a bit of an unusual situation. I think we probably have a little bit of differing opinions on the board tonight. My good friend, Deputy Supervisor Villanova, may have a little bit different view on how to move forward in this resolution, but I'm going to turn it over to you because I know you've done a lot of hard work. And before we get into discussion, I want to thank you. I want to thank Mr. Nowotnik. I want to thank Mr. Gianfrancisco for the hundreds and hundreds of hours of hard work you put into the move and bidding the contract twice and negotiating the contracts. I want to thank all of you for your hard work.
Okay, before I start, the one good thing that comes of fair-minded discussions is that, and really the great thing about our board is that we can agree to disagree.
Right.
And what the Supervisor Carvin's alluding to is that Joe and I are right now of two different opinions. But we're going to present really our opinions to the board, and we'll take it from there because, again, this is a democracy, and everybody has one vote. And
I mean, Richard Abel should be here for the transparency, transparency labor law.
Well, but that's really the truth, And we've always done the right thing. We've always been forthcoming with information, and it's not. And Tom will realize, and I think he's realized already. It's not about what party you're with. It's just really about what your opinion is, and that's what the value. Okay, so quite simply, and we have a few resolutions here. One of them is the tenant fit out, and the preferred bidder that we have is Peter A. Camilli and Sons. We have Sullivan Data as part of the moving contract, and that's part of the phones, the phone lines, the data, computer connections, and all of that. We have Light Path Telephone, and that's going to be our phone provider, communications provider. They represent 40 separate communities, municipalities.
Yeah, they do something in the neighborhood of 25 towns and villages, and I think 19 schools.
Okay, and then the last resolution is the furniture for 222 Grace Church Street. So anyway, this is where we are. Quite simply, we have been going through this project for the better part of a year. We identified early on a couple different options. One of the options included the opportunity to look at using the second floor of Crawford Park. We looked at the opportunity of going to a private building like 800 Westchester Avenue. Councilwoman Christina Collins was part of that, vetting those properties, and we came to the best decision that we identified, and that decision was to move a majority of our operation to the third floor of 222 Grace Church Street, which will be with the Village of Portchester municipality, and the courts would be moved to 350 North Main Street. And so those agreements right now are in place. The leases, the lease for Portchester has been signed. We have a contract in place to sell 10 Pearl Street. And so that entire mechanism has been put into place. We have a lot of benefit from the move, from the build. A new updated facility, The first time in our area where we'll have the village offices, the town offices, and the state offices all in one building. The town of Rye now, as it sits, the staffing and the employees work together but through walls. And the new facility that we have, there are no walls. So we are in a position to give our employees and the department heads the better opportunity to collaborate and to share their staff and build on the strengths of everyone's talents. So that's a great opportunity to give the town of Rye really a second to none facility to work from. Part of the decision to sell 10 Pearl Street was the condition. We have a water problem, we have a mold problem, we have the structure itself is ultimately antiquated. The building that we're in now, we use less than 50% of the building, and so sometimes businesses outgrow where they are. But we have right-sized government in such a fashion that we are in a position to look for better space to make the town of Rye a better municipality. 800 Westchester Avenue, while an opportunity to present itself to move there, 800 Westchester Avenue, just in my opinion, is not the kind of facility that we need to have our residents go to. It's difficult to find, it's difficult to navigate in the parking, and it's difficult to navigate even getting up into the lobby into the space there. So while there may be the opportunity for lesser value cost, what you're losing there is the value to the residents, to have the ease of use, ease of access, and really to have that one-stop shopping with the Village of Portchester. Also, the town of Rye, we have our agreements in place where we would be paying rent. And I think our rent being paid to the Village of Portchester much better serves the taxpayers rather than paying rent to a private entity where there is no benefit to the taxpayers. So this is really, I'm at the point right now where I'm representing and I'm vested. All of my interests, all of our efforts over the past year has put ourselves in this position to move forward with these resolutions. As Supervisor Carver mentioned, Bishop Nowotnik and Gary Jeffrey-Sesko, and I'm going to give Gary and Bishop the opportunity just to close up this dialogue when I'm done. But to get us to this point, it was a lot of work. There was a lot of massaging, and really, it was. We took it on really as a task, but then it just became a labor of love, and we know exactly where every screw is going to go. The facility itself, the furniture, it's all usable stuff. The selection's right on down to the door pulls and the drawer pulls. That's what's been identified. We've also modified the scope of work to make the project more palatable, and what we've done, we have reused items that we can, current serviceable items we've reused, and we've modified the scope of work, the actual physical work, to lend itself to a reduced cost. And we have seen that one estimate that we had early on was approximately $75,000, and in all actuality, the right number we thought was maybe around $275,000. And then after our second bid, we thought it was $375,000. Quite simply, we went from bids that hit a threshold of approximately $660,000, and where we are now, the bid that we have is $498,000. If we remove the $20,000 that represent the Village of Portchester's contribution towards the new HVAC unit, we're at $478,000. And then if we apply the $95,000 that Portchester will contribute to making sure that the facility, that the area that we're going to be using is up to code when it comes to ADA, fire suppression, and all of that, that brings the actual cost of this project out of the Town of Rye budget to $383,000. And on a side note, and which is public knowledge, the Village of Portchester estimated that it was going to cost them $50,000 to modify a couple rooms to accommodate the court, the Town of Rye Court over at 350 North Main. Their actual value came in for their budget is at $150,000. Okay, so it just happens to be where we are right now. That is what the going market rate is. I've shared this with the board. I'll share it with the public. There's projects that I'm working on where my bid of the project last year was $85,000, and now I'm at $168,000. Just happens to be that that's where we are right now. It costs a little bit more money than what we estimated. It does not devalue, and it does not change the benefit to the town. It doesn't change the benefit to the public. I still think this is a very worthy and fair-minded project that will benefit the Town of Rye today and the residents of the Town of Rye for years to come. So now I just want to give Bishop Nowotnik and Gary Gianfrancesco the opportunity just to fill in the public on any items that I may have missed.
Let's see. Commissioner Villanova did a good review of where we are and how we got there. I just wanted to perhaps share with the board that the schedule we keep, I didn't make too many copies, but I do have a couple here, indicates that if we approve the project today, we would be ready to move in basically late August. So just to make sure that the board understands what the time frame is. We're talking about 10-month construction period.
10 weeks.
Actually, 10-week, that's what I meant, 10-week construction period. I apologize.
And the other item, obviously, it'll be a couple weeks to make sure that we have all the proper permitting in place. Mr. Gianfrancesco has been working very closely with Mr. Miley. The Village of Portchester has afforded us some great courtesies, and will definitely give the Town of Rye and our vendors great access to our permits at a rapid rate.
Okay.
Gary?
Mr. Supervisor, members of the board, Gary Gianfrancesco, Arconics Architecture, PC, and there's not much really to add except I would just like to point out that with regard to the bidding process and public bids in particular, there's what a project costs and what a project is worth. And somewhere in between there is where things ultimately fall. There's no science to the bid process. However, we think at this juncture we have a much fairer representation of what the real value is. And if there was an area that we may have had some misconceptions on initially, we characterized this initially as a tenant fit-out, when in fact a tenant fit-out would imply a typical office arrangement where you would be reutilizing certain aspects of the existing space. In this case, it's a completely new self-contained HVAC system. It's a new self-contained electrical system, and the electrical number was probably the worst number in the whole process, representing about 25% of the total bid. And there's nothing esoteric in there in the way of fixtures or anything like that. We do have an energy-saving, what we call natural light harvesting component to this project, which, given the skylights, and if you've been in the space, it certainly is worthy of taking advantage of that natural light. That's one of the nicest parts of the space, as well as the elevated ceilings. But on a small job, and this is considered a small public job, the soft costs are an inordinate proportion to the rest of the job. The insurances, the bonds, and then dealing with the prevailing wage information for contractors, it just becomes a bit burdensome, and we heard that from some of the bidders. The first go-round, we did not get the kind of participation that we did the second time. And again, we think we have a fair representation of what this job is worth based on the numbers that's before you this evening. I have worked with Peter Camilli and Sons, as well as some of the other bidders there. I feel very confident in their ability to get the job done timely for the numbers that are before us. And it has been a long road, and it's been a winding road at times, but we think this is about as good as it gets, and we look forward to getting it built for you.
And lastly, I want to mention the Village of Portchester. The Village of Portchester has been very accommodating with our schedule and giving us full access to the facility, really from stem to stern at 222, to make sure that we have and can represent a better than average product for this renovation. Now, the one thing that I do want to also mention is that the Village of Portchester not only accommodated us with space, they were very generous with the space that they provided us, and in addition to that, also moved a tenant out of one area to give us contiguous space, and that tenant has been moved to better serve for the town of Rye, to better serve the town of Rye. So that being said, remember, there really is. We could talk about this. I could talk about this for the next half hour, but I think that everybody knows where I am and where I stand with this. But I'm in favor of going forward, and I'm asking for the board's support on these resolutions.
Well, look, thank you very much, Deputy Supervisor Villanova. Thank you, Mr. Gianfrancisco. Thank you, Mr. Nowotny. And again, let me emphasize the fact that I appreciate how hard all of you have worked on this. You've bid this twice. You've spent countless hours with the contractor, and I want to thank you for your service. The town's lucky to have had all of you work in this project. I don't think, we're going to be able to do any better than what you've done. My concern is the following. I'm not saying don't do this. I'm saying wait 2 weeks and evaluate all the options. Now, why am I saying that? Well, because unfortunately, and we've heard it, this is not only the town of Rye. We've heard it. We've heard that construction projects that came in triple. We heard the court project that the village is doing for us. We heard from Rybrook earlier this evening. They bid out a project with $60,000, came in $80,000. They pulled the project. Now, we have the unfortunate situation where I got up in front of the whole community and I said, listen, guys, the net cost of the build-out is going to cost $75,000. $75,000. We'll all have that. Well, so I got up in our presentation, the public presentation, we have it in writing, $75,000. Well, our net build-out costs are $383,000. That's where we are today. It's no fault. The work was diligent. It's nobody's fault. That's the reality. Now, when we have a new reality where we've missed the estimate by 5 times, it's 500% more costly than what we anticipated. I think we got to, at least, at a minimum, spend a couple of weeks and go back to the drawing board. I think we owe it. It's not real complicated. If I go to put an addition on my house, a 2,000-foot addition, I'm thinking $75,000. Hope you help me out here. I'm putting an addition on 2,000 square feet, $75,000. It comes in at $383,000. You bid it twice now. That's the market. I understand that's the market. I bid it twice. Well, I've got to think, you know what? Maybe I only want to go for 1,000 feet. Maybe I ought to get a, or sell the house and move. And ultimately, I think it's incumbent on us and the way we've run our business from day one. First of all, transparency. My other big concern is transparency. The public's never heard the number. The public hasn't heard, I love the way this board has always embraced the challenge.
Well, we did talk the numbers at the last.
No, you didn't. I got the videotape. I went to the videotape. I can give you, if you want the...
Oh, no. I just remember discussing them or seeing that, okay.
Well, you did, and that's why, if you want, I have
I trust you
I have
personally.
if you want, I'll print and give you the transcript. In fact, what you said was you'd call a special meeting.
Okay.
The last April meeting said, we didn't get the bids in time to be able to evaluate them, and what you said is we'll call a special meeting to review it. That special meeting hasn't taken place. Look, I'm simply saying, let's take 2 weeks. Let's evaluate every option. Can anybody on this board tell me what the square foot cost is of the move? Anybody? $33. $33 a square foot. If we look, there's other alternatives we can look at that will cost in the 20s. I'm not suggesting, quite frankly, my expectation is that we'll probably make the move. But I think we owe it to our constituents as a good fiduciary to evaluate every other opportunity. I think to move forward in this fashion is not consistent with the diligent, transparent way we've run the town from day one. I guess that's the first point. Second point, we had a meeting this afternoon where the court situation that we thought was ready to move, Portchester's coming back to us and saying, look, we need to revisit that issue. We need to revisit the nature of that move and the cost of that move. I think you have a lot of moving parts. I think you had a dramatic change in what we told the public. And I think the way this board does due diligence, it's fundamentally important to retain our credibility, quite frankly, with the public, to evaluate every opportunity, and then come back in 2 weeks' time and say, we've looked at all the options. I love moving to Portchester. I love the idea of a government center. But I don't see 2 weeks is going to make a difference one way or another. And then we can come back credibly and say, you know what? If we stayed here, I've talked to Domira, and you know what? It would cost us $24 a square foot. And we could do this. And we've evaluated it, and we've turned it down. I want to pay $33 a square foot. I think, and the other thing you mentioned about Portchester, I think it's fundamentally important that Portchester be involved in this decision. We have town dissolution looming in the background. It may or may not happen. And I'll give you an update a little bit later on. It may or may not happen. But at the end of the day, I got one of the village trustees sent me an email saying, how the heck are you going to spend $300,000 on construction costs if you're going to dissolve, you're going to have a vote in November to be dissolved? And, I think that's a fair-minded question. And so I think you're absolutely right. Portchester has bent over backwards to work with us. I think it's important that we work with Portchester because I think potentially these monies may be theirs. So I want them to help us to make the decision. If you ask me today, I think it's a better than 50% chance we end up doing exactly what's being proposed. But I don't think it's consistent with the way this government's been run, because we tried to run it like a business, wholly transparent, and neither of those two things are being done with, in my view, this rush to build. I'm not suggesting we organize a special meeting tonight. We can declare the date. We can describe the work that needs to be done, and ultimately have a comprehensive presentation for the full public hearing, fully due diligence, that will say, you know what, we're going to stay with the decision we want because these are the numbers. So that's I'm not, and by the way, just to be fair, even some marriages have disagreements, and Billy and I have had a fair-minded disagreement. And Billy and I, exchange emails back and forth, and I appreciate his frustration. The guy's put in well over 100 hours. I understand the frustration. And, it's like when I'm working in my business, some bureaucrat from, says, well, wait, so I appreciate and understand your frustration. But I also have been, I think, pretty fair-minded to say, Billy, look, I can't support this tonight. And so we thought, the best way, the way this board runs is transparency. So Billy and I agreed to air our differences here and have the board, make a decision. And look, we all have fiduciary responsibility. Whatever decision the board makes, I'm fully comfortable with. And because we all have our own fiduciary responsibility.
And that's really that's what's important, is to have that kind of discussion, that public discussion, and hope you've been here with the town of Rye. Nick has been here for quite some time. Dave, and you haven't seen that so much, and that's why I think that not only is it important that we're having this kind of debate or discourse regarding this project, but even though we're having the discourse, I think it makes the Town of Rye Board more legitimate, and it really shows the integrity as well. So,
Yeah. So other comments from the board?
Oh boy, I have to start. I guess the first.
Did you make a motion? Then you can talk as, you know what I'm saying?
okay, on the question.
Well, there's four motions. I mean, let's have the debate. Let's have the conversation.
Well, I'm saying you would debate around the motion. That's my
No,
point.
but there's four, we all
instead
know,
of
Paul,
pulling
I
them,
think we're all
you know.
pretty clear, there's four motions that have to do with the move. If we're either going to either hold off on table the four motions, or move forward with them.
What about leaving, just getting water?
Yeah. Hey, Billy, get a couple, will you? Sorry, Councilwoman Collins.
I suppose Bishop is probably best suited to answer this, perhaps not, but when we first of all, when you make an estimate in any industry, my own industry, the design world included, you do your best to put an estimate forward, and then next thing you know, project scope is nothing like what you thought it was going to be. So I always forgive when an estimate is not quite what it turns out to be. Of course, you're always disappointed, but you have to pivot, and that's what we're doing now. Why did we make that? How did we arrive at that original estimate of $75,000?
Hang on a second, I just want to make sure I have my little crib sheet.
You got Bishop, go to the podium, please.
Yeah.
To be totally frank, the $75,000 estimate was an estimate that was born before there was any scope of work at all, before there were any locations selected. It was purely an idea of saying we could perhaps move. The landlord would pick up the tab. We'd have some moving expenses and be done. Again, that was just a conceptual discussion, and that's how that started. It was only later, after we went into, and I forget, I put a memo out for...
No, but Bishop, but you know, the $75,000 was before we hired an architect.
Yes.
Once we had the architect on board, the estimate went to $128,225. So we started at 75, I think, with just a walkthrough, a guesstimate. The next estimate was when we had hired our architect, and we were at $128,225.
And then we peeled back the onion, as they say. Right? Just a note on that is that although we've put that number forward to the public, like you said in your presentation, in hindsight, I think we should have done a little bit more research and discovery before we had made those numbers available and that we based our opinions on.
Yeah.
So, lesson learned.
Well, remember, part of the escalation came from when we found out that 222 Grace Church Street required much more remediation work, and the Village of Portchester really didn't want to take on that cost, so we had to take that on. And eventually, I think when the lease was finally negotiated, we negotiated a give-back credit to accommodate that. However, the give-back credit wasn't where the remediation work was. So again,
older building.
Right, and it kept on creeping up. I mean, the real culprit here, frankly, is prevailing wage clause in New York State.
Could you explain that a little bit more to me, given my ignorance on the construction
Okay,
world?
there is a law in municipal law that requires municipalities to pay prevailing wages. These wages are determined by a tribunal up in Albany, and they monitor all the local unions, And it's primarily a union-based wage with union-based benefits and those kinds of things. And that's what every municipality is required to do. And as I am being told, any contract over $1,500. Now, we went through the prevailing wage discussion when we talked about the landscaping and the maintenance work at Crawford Park. I found out that there are two different types of prevailing wage, the Section 8 and Section 9 prevailing wage. The bottom line here is that in New York State, what's happened is union pricing has continually gone up, union benefits have continually gone up with inflation and so forth. However, with the recession, with all of the things that have happened in the economy, in the general economy, prices have become much more competitive in the private market. Much more competitive. So now you have a scenario where a prevailing wage job will add 50% or more to the contract pricing just because it's being done by a municipality and requires it, as opposed to a private business doing it. It's something we cannot get around. It's up to the state legislator.
It's not something we can't get around with the current proposal. There are ways to get around it.
There are other ways to get around it.
My whole point is we ought to consider these things. If 50 out of the box, you're telling me anything we do is 50% more expensive, my point is at least we should just examine other alternatives that would not require prevailing wage. So I'm just saying, why not take a look at it? Sorry.
And one of the other questions I guess I have is when you talk about looking at other options and things like that, what do you have any options in mind that you want to look at that you feel need more time to evaluate?
Yeah, I think there's a whole host of options. Obviously, the options would require sitting down with the person buying this building, and would require sitting down with the Village of Portchester. We just got bad news today on the Village of Portchester in terms of the court move that we'll go into executive session to talk about, which again adds a whole nother level of uncertainty. And so my only point is when presented with bad news, take the bull by the horns and deal with it. And I think we should sit down and have a considered conversation to look at a whole host of alternatives. And as I say, quite frankly, I think if I'm more than 50% likely we're going to end up where we are. But I think we owe it to ourselves to consider every alternative here. And again, if we're talking about, we talked with the contractor, he's prepared to retain his pricing through till July. I'm only talking about 2 weeks. I think we get back, we have 2 weeks, we look at these, evaluate these, have some conversations with Portchester, have some conversations with the purchaser of the property, and then have a full-blown analysis of, these different kind of opportunities that we could look at.
By the way, the pricing expires on July 13th.
13th. Well, I'm talking 2 weeks from now, so we're
okay.
Well within that. Although I don't want to, look, I think there are, again, I understand the frustration, and there's real reasons why we can't dilly-dally. Now, so we can't dilly-dally. So I think in a matter of 2 weeks, we can do the kind of due diligence I'm talking about, take a look at it, and come up with a considered decision. So I'm suggesting we meet again in 2 weeks.
Are you thinking about going to different different buildings?
I think there's a whole host of alternatives. One of them, we could stay here. We should examine that, how that would impact. That would be one of the things we looked at.
Stay here as in not sell, or stay here as in
sell
and
then
rent?
Stay here, right? That's one alternative. There's another, so that would be one idea. I would look at a number of different options, and you talked about the private sector. One of the things we've talked about is outsourcing, right? If we're going to consider outsourcing, and I presume the board's going to think that's far too complex. My expectation is the board's going to think it's far too complex to try and do that now. But certainly it's something we should talk about in any case. And if we're going to talk about it, if you'd have $383,000 for the private entity to work with. $383,000 if you decide to outsource. So at least we ought to give that consideration. We have a multinational corporation desperate to come in here and work with us on an outsourcing proposal. We held it off because of the move, and we didn't do it at the same time. So I think there's a lot of different potential alternatives that are worth examining. If you ask me to put a gun to my head, I say it's still more likely we're just going to move forward. Bite the bullet, because that's where the market is. I mean, again, no one can fault Mr. Gianfrancisco, Mr. Nowotnik, and Mr. Villanova. They found the market. I mean, they beat the crap out of this poor guy. And they found the market. So it's not about where the market is. It's about, okay, let's just take a step back. This is the market. My expectations will still probably move forward, but I just don't want. I'm not prepared to vote for it personally today, and I made that clear for a while now.
I mean, I think my concern at this point is that, we had suggested looking more, intimately at options at the very beginning of this process when I was part of looking for other options. I know I felt very strongly about the idea of looking to leverage Crawford Park in a way that could benefit us, but the consensus at that time was that we wanted to be part of creating this government center, and there was a strong consensus for that, and that was the decision that was made, and I feel we've gone so far down this road that is now the right time to really start doing that. Again, I feel like we put the cart before the horse a little bit when it came to making that estimated number, when we came to committing to Grace Church Street.
Christina, pardon me, but that's why I wanted to have this conversation tonight. You make decisions, as you suggested, based on information in front of you. I am disappointed that we didn't have a better number than the 75,000. And I got it in front of everybody in the whole community and said, this is the number. So I feel a deep embarrassment that I got up in front of everybody and said 75. Then we got, and again, this is not just us. Every municipality is in county. Then we got up with the benefit of architectural review. And I'm sure Mr. Gianfrancisco is just as surprised as we all are. And boy, they've due diligence this thing every nook and cranny, every corner. But so when we made the decision to move forward, and I'm simply saying my expectation is, yes, we're going to discard those other options, but we should certainly, given the level of expenditure, it's $383,000 on a $3 million budget. That's a big number for us, a big number. Rye Brook turned out today, they bid a project for 60, came in 80. They said, no, forget the project, we're not doing it.
Yeah, but you can't compare, with all due respect to Rye Brook, that's a small project. We're talking about making history here with moving our government offices. So, that was a project that they just said, well, let's not do it. I mean, we're vested. We have contracts.
We're also putting a building back on the tax roll.
And actually, that's one other point I want to make. You're absolutely right. By the way, I'm not sure if I made this clear. I still believe, even on these numbers, the decision to sell the town property makes infinite sense. So there's no thought here of reversing the process. I just want to make absolutely clear, I fully support what we're doing, and I think, as I said, I'm prepared to. I'd feel more comfortable if we just evaluated other options, took a look at them, and then said, you know what, we've done our due diligence, we're thoroughly transparent. You guys have spent all this work on it. On this particular option, I'd like to see Mr. Nowotnik and Mr. Arcaro just come up with numbers on some of these other options, sit down and see where we end up. I fully expect we'll end up where we are tonight. But I want us to make a fully informed decision, and I don't think we're capable of doing that. And as I said, the other thing that's happened, regardless, Portchester's come back to us with certainly a conundrum that provides us with another sense of uncertainty that we need to deal with in any case. So while we're sitting down with Portchester, you may want to take the 2 weeks to evaluate the other options. There's another potential solution.
I just want to address that one issue. We do have a lease with Portchester, which obligates both of us to do certain things. So that conundrum is of their own creation, not something that's our fault.
No, that's absolutely correct.
And
my
of course, as good neighbors, we're happy to work with them.
I guess my expectation, and we'll talk about this in executive session, I can't imagine any scenario, Mr. Noto, where we're going to go to them and say, you know what, take it, and leave it. I can't imagine any scenario we're going to say, bite the bullet, You incur the additional cost because, again, they bid a project that came in 3 times more expensive. So ultimately, they'll be out of pocket huge monies if we force them to hold to that letter, that contract. I can't imagine any scenario, maybe the board, again, has a different view. I can't imagine any scenario where we're going to go to them and say, take it or leave it. Yeah, I don't know if any of the other council people have any thoughts or comments?
Well, I'd like to say that, I'd like to think as a board that we're flexible and we take new information in stride and use that to make informed decisions. If you recall, with the stairwell for Crawford Park, the initial bid came in, or we initially thought it would be somewhere around $25,000 or $30,000 in that ballpark, and it ended up being close to 100 or over 100 after we went through the bidding process and had an architect design how that would end out. And then we decided at that time that we just weren't to go ahead with it because we had some new information. We had a price that was 2 or 3 times more. Quite frankly, I'm for spending a little bit of time to take a look at some alternative options. I don't see what waiting 2 additional weeks is going to cost us. There might be some fees we need to pay for staying here, but I don't see what that's going to cost us, and I don't see why we can't look at other options at this juncture, especially since the initial cost of $75,000 has gone up, what, 5-fold, right? That's $383,000, and now we're getting higher bids from the other municipality for $350,000, right? Main Street. So the costs are going up all around, and I think it's time to reconsider whether or not this is the best option for us, for a town. And from what I understand, should we invest essentially $500,000 in going to 222 Grace Church Street, PC is also thinking about moving out of there and selling that building, so we would have put that money in that would not be wasted. We'd be able to use it for a period of time, but certainly not forever should they sell that building and build a new building on Irving Avenue. So there are a lot of too many unknowns right now, and you couple that with the fact that, if we do dissolve, why are we spending this money right now, and shouldn't we save that and then disperse it to the towns?
I don't see that the town of Rye is going to dissolve anytime soon. People are not. I don't think that there's an appetite in the community for it, and we've had this discussion, Supervisor Carvin and myself. The villages, they're not championing that.
Well, I didn't want to get on the topic of dissolve.
Well, no, but you brought it up, and the truth is, for the past year, we've worked on this build, sale, move, but for the past year, dissolution was pretty much non-existent. And, but we have stayed the course. We have done due diligence. We've gone down this path. We've identified. We all saw the list that Mr. Nowotnik and Mr. Arcaro gave us. And quite simply, the only alternative that was less expensive than what we're proposing was staying here in this building and consolidating everything on the first floor. I mean, to me, that's not an option. This building is falling apart. This building has mold. While I can understand, I appreciate what you're saying that so we wait a couple of weeks. You know what? This project's going to take 8 to 10 weeks to work. It's going to take us 2 weeks to get permits. Village of Portchester has invested a lot of time, and the Supervisor Carvin himself has said that the chances are better than 50% that he would support doing this. Quite frankly, I think we've done the due diligence. We've identified that it would cost us over $1 million to renovate this facility. And to renovate a facility that we only use less than 50% of, that's a waste of money. And that's the reason why we got to that point, that we were going to sell this building.
Yeah, but the building's sold. We wouldn't need to renovate 50% of it. We would need to renovate something smaller than that percent. Right. And it would be less of a renovation project not quite as extensive as putting in new electrical work and new air conditioning, but it could be, much simpler than that. So, and that's only potentially one alternative. I would be remiss in not advising the board to look at other alternatives at this juncture, should a better alternative arise or be out there for us. And I don't see why we couldn't spend a couple of weeks to look at that.
My concern is that we have spent those weeks. We've spent months. We spent the better part of a year. And so we came to the point now where we're ready to pull the trigger and make a decision to move forward with a worthy project for the town of Rye. And now we're back to the point where we're going to do more analysis. We're at that. It's we're entertaining going, looking at all other opportunities.
I think there's.
I just think that if this is the route that we're going, we can do this with everything. And for the smallest project or the largest project. And I don't want us to be that bored. We've invested a lot of time and a lot of effort in this project.
I've realized a lot of effort.
And there's a lot of information. And thank you, Bob. And there's a lot of information that came to us that brought us to this point. Myself and Bishop and Mr. Gianfrancesco didn't just wake up one morning and say, okay, let's go do this project. We got the charge, we got the vote unanimously from the board to do this. And that's the reason why we did it, because the town board said to go forward. I'm exhausted.
Yeah, I think the, I think the problem you have is, and again, I fully appreciate and understand your frustration, but the project cost that we anticipate is not the project cost that we got. I guess that's the first point. Second point is, I think it's, I certainly would love to sit down with the Village of Portchester and see if there's not things we can do to even make this move. I know you guys have, looked at it 100 different ways, but there may be ways to make this move more efficient. And so, and I do, look, we talked about it a lot. Maybe it's my background in financial due diligence, but it just seems to me common sense. You go to put an addition on, it costs 5 times more than you think. You ought to take a step back and figure out where you are. And I don't think we lose anything by waiting 2 weeks. I really don't. No one can tell me the cost, and the cost of making a mistake is far greater than the cost of waiting 2 weeks. Particularly in view of the fact that the courts right now are not prepared to move forward as we anticipated. So you have a whole new level of uncertainty that you didn't have previously. Mr. Nardi, do you want to?
Well, I mean, you already had a second round of bidding. You had numbers that came in, and then you revised your plans, and you came back with some smaller numbers, and I just don't. With all this, I'm just not sure about waiting or not.
Do we have some specifics on what we would achieve and specifically what we're looking to tackle and find out and discover in the next 2 weeks?
This is the whole problem, Christina. We got the numbers on April 11th. To be fair, today's May, what are we, May what, 20th? 20th. I'm sorry. I don't think we handled this the way we could have. When we got these horrific numbers, we should have addressed it, earlier on. So we're waiting 2 weeks because we got the first printout last night. So, I think there's 10 alternatives I have in my head that I'd like to do diligence. Can I tell you specifically what they're going to be? No.
Fair enough answer.
Yeah.
Just, I'm right now just trying to ask questions so that we can arrive at the best. I don't necessarily have what I want you to answer.
No, sure.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure, please.
if one of these alternatives includes or is not moving to 222 Grace Church Street, we're contractually obligated to pay rent as of this month, and that obligation doesn't go away. Even if we decide not to go there, legally they can enforce the lease. At a minimum, they'll get a minimum of a year's rent from us because it's a 12-month termination time. So I'm not sure if the board is aware of that we have a lease, and that lease is